Hello, welcome to Life with Francie podcast, a place where you will find all kinds of conversation like mental health, self-love, self-care, trauma, hobbies, and more. With this podcast, I want to create a place where we support one another in business and personal life. Hope you enjoy this episode. Now, let's get this show started. On today's episode, I have the pleasure to talk to Tyler Foley. I met him through Potmatch, an amazing community for podcast guests and podcast hosts to do amazing collaborations like this one. So go and check it out. And Tyler is a remarkable and versatile performer with a broad range of experience in film, television, and stage. With an acting career that began at the age of 6, Tyler has since made unforgettable appearances on production. So I'm excited to get to know him. And so, welcome to the show. What is life with you, Tyler?
Well, life with me, Francie, is chaotic, hectic, entertaining, and probably a little maddening. I know you'd have to ask my wife. I think she is probably one of the greatest humans on the being just for being able to put up with me because I am doing something different every day. There is never one day that is the same.
That's awesome. So, yeah, so you have a great acting career and things like that. Oh, tell me more.
Well, I mean, it's a long and storied career of a lot of projects that nobody's ever seen me in. So it's I started on stage when I was 6 years old. Moved into film and television in my later teens. Got into stunt work in my early 20s. Retired from the acting business at 25. Got into engineering. Got an engineering discipline under my belt. Civil engineering specifically, and photogrammetry as a specialist, and then totally went back to acting and stage performance and public speaking. In the last decade, I've really focused on using all the tools that I've learned over the course of my life to help other people be better public speakers. So, and that includes public speaking myself. So it's just been a crazy journey, but yeah, lots of stuff on the resume from the acting, from Door to Door, Freddy versus Jason, the TV remake of Carrie. I was in the musical Ragtime. There's lots of stuff, and some newer credits too that are big projects that make me sign NDAs, so I'm not even allowed to talk about them.
Wow, that's awesome. That's great. So, yeah, tell us more about your speaking career then.
Well, that has been just a joy and a pleasure. I've been speaking on stage, like performing on stage since six, but doing public speaking and evaluated public speaking since I was about 10 years old. And over the last, I still remember the first time I was asked to give a keynote. I didn't even know what a keynote presentation was. It was one of those things where I was like, what is this keynote you are discussing, and what are you asking me to do? I don't understand. And I actually had to look up the term when the guy asked. I was like, oh, speak for 45 minutes. Yeah, I can totally do that. And that happened almost 10 years ago to the day, actually, of us recording this. Was when I was asked, because it would have been just coming into the summer of 2013, and on a construction site that I was safety managing, of all things, the one of the key leadership guys was there, and I had been yelling at some guys about how what they were doing was unsafe, and how I had a job in film jumping out of windows, and that was safer than what they were doing. And this gentleman had overheard me. And he said, "Is that true?" And I said, "Is what true?" He's like, Did you used to jump out of windows for a living?" I'm like, "Well, I did a stunt once where I jumped out of a 6-story window. And yes, it was actually safer than what these guys are doing." And he was just fascinated by it. And he asked me to give it as a toolbox talk, was just a safety meeting in the morning the next day. And I did. And another executive heard me, and she had come up to me and said, "Listen, I really struggle with public speaking. You seem to do it really well. Would you be interested in coaching me?" And I said, "Sure." And then as we were getting into the specifics of it, she asked if I would come and present a keynote at their safety stand down. And I thought, why not? That seems fun. Like I said, I didn't know what it was when she originally asked, but then as I looked into it, it became more and more apparent and clear. So that kind of kicked off the last decade of public speaking, and it's just been phenomenal. I've spoke all over the world. I've gotten to travel with it. I've gotten to see some amazing things, meet some incredible people, yourself included. The public speaking has brought me into being a guest on podcasts because there is limitless possibilities of where you can present your message if you really want to look. And I've been on over 350 podcasts in the last year as a guest, and that's been phenomenal. And then on top of it, I got to write a book about it, and then that created its own business and life cycle, and that has just been amazing as well.
Yeah, I know. I say at the beginning before the interview, like my interviews are average of 30 minutes, but you have so much going on, like we can talk forever.
It's
And
true.
yeah, I saw about the book and especially with a Pat Match collaboration. So can you tell us more about it? I am so like it's not only because they offer the affiliate side and commission for podcast guests, it's just so many resources, and I have met some amazing people in there, and you get your reviews and stuff like that. So I had to give a quick shout out to Podmatch.
Oh
But
yeah,
yeah, tell us more.
honestly, what Alex and Jesse and Alicia have put together with Podmatch, that's the founder and his wife, and Jesse is their main tech guy. That platform is spectacular, and from it, I originally got on um Podmatch because my PR agent actually said, she was trying to book me onto the big podcast, and she's like, "Listen, I really need you to get on some other ones and kind of like get experience doing podcasts." I'm like, "I've been doing radio and television for like 30 years. I think I'm okay with this." She's like, "No, but we need to show a track record of the podcast, and you really want to build it. Trust me, you want to do this thing." And she said, "I could charge you, but I charge a lot, or you could go on this pod match thing." And I'm like, "What?" And she explained it, perfectly. She was like, "Well, it's like a dating app for podcasters and and shows." And I'm like, "Okay, well, why not? I'll give it a shot." And she'd actually recommended 3 or 4 different online services that do similar things, but Podmatch by far is the best platform out there for that. And so I'd originally gone on to plug my book, The Power to Speak Naked. And over the course of a couple of different interviews, I ended up meeting some other really, really incredible human beings. And then one of them is a publisher, and he asked if I would be interested in going in on a collaboration. And then that ended up becoming Podcast Guest Mastery. So now I get to say that I am a 2-time best-selling author, and one of them I was because of Podmatch. And I didn't have to do a lot with that. I just contributed a little bit of advice and guidance, and then all of a sudden that took on to a life of its own too. So we've got the 2 books out there, and that it's been incredible from a credibility standpoint, and just from a promotional standpoint. The SEO, the search engine optimization on my website, is through the roof. 350 podcasts later, and everybody backlinking to my website. I'm the number 1 hit. If you put either one of my names, Tyler Foley, or my professional name, Sean Tyler Foley, if you put either one into Google search, I'm like the first 10 pages on Google, which is unheard of.
That's amazing. I love that. And yeah, and tell us about your own book.
Well, The Power to Speak Naked came about because my agent told me I needed to write a book. Because I started out of this public speaking gig, and I've had representation in agents and managers for forever, ever, at least since I was 12 years old. And so I was very familiar with looking for representation. And so when I decided to really focus in on this public speaking thing, I knew I needed to get an agent. And my agent was really happy to onboard me and bring me on, but I wanted, she was getting me these gigs, and it's fun money, like it's not money to sneeze at, but I knew that I could earn more, and I wanted more. And so she was like, "Well, if you want the more, you need to have X, Y, and Z." And I'm like, "Well, I've got the courses, I've got the skill set to do it, I've got the storytelling." She's like, "Yeah, but you don't have a book, and nobody's going to book you if you don't have a book." And so I was like, well, fine, I'll write a book. And what I ended up doing was taking my training course and stripping the audio out of it, transcribing that audio, and then compiling all of those various training modules into the 10 chapters of the book. And then now I have The Power to Speak Naked, which is a very, very easy to read book. According to my publisher, it's a 114-minute read. So it's under 2 hours to read the thing. Always looks great too if you're reading it in any public space, because it's got a big naked guy on the front. So you're that person who's reading the book and people are looking at you like, what are you reading? It's great. It's wonderful. And so, that came about really fun. And now, and again, the feedback on the book has been awesome too, because so many people struggle with public speaking. And like, even my wife's maid of honor has to do a whole bunch of presentations for her work, and she bought a copy. I didn't ask her to. She bought a copy on her own, and we were at a Christmas get together at their place the same year that she bought it, and she was telling everybody, she's like, you have to read Tyler's book. You have to read Tyler's book. It's so good. I didn't like doing presentations, but then I read his book, and now I can do presentations. She's like the greatest endorsement that I could have. And the number of people who come back and say that over and over again, it warms my heart, because I forget sometimes that people need to hear what's in the book. It's real easy to become complacent when you authored a thing and put it out there, because I'm on to new stuff now, right? But the feedback that continually comes back day in and day out of, this is a message that I needed to hear. This book has really helped. That makes what I do worthwhile.
That's awesome. I love that, and I can't wait to check it out as well. Yeah, what is the power of a story?
Well, so we have been communicating as a human species through stories for millennia. And I think a lot of people forget that. And I think, particularly in modern society with the prevalence of the written word, I think people forget just how uncommon this level of literacy within our history is. You don't have to go back even 200 years in history, and the number of people who could read and write the written language is drastically less than what it is now. It used to be a very privileged few who could read and write, and it's only in the last 200 to 300 years where that has really started to change, with the advent of the printing press and a more push for education and literacy becoming a more prevalent and available tool to people. And so for eons, we communicated through oral tradition, passed down through stories, because stories are how we remember things. Stories are what provide context to the information that's being provided. And if, they say never judge a person until you've walked a mile in their shoes, but realistically, that's not possible. Like, that's a metaphorical thing. And so for me to be able to walk a mile in your shoes, I need to experience what you've experienced. And the best way for me to experience that is through the retelling of your story, so that I can see the world through your eyes, so that I can experience these things the way that you experienced them. And so I think that's the real power of story, because through story, we're able to gain sympathy, we're able to gain empathy, we're able to gain understanding. And those are a lot of the things that are, frankly, currently missing in today's society. We are so busy to make things black and white that we forget that everybody, even if you have, similar interests or affiliations, everybody experiences the world slightly different. And I can't understand how you perceive the world until you tell me, so that I can step behind the lens of your camera and see the world through your eyes.
I love that. I am trying because I would love to tell my story. So I'm gonna like re-listen to this episode a million times so I can like get it. Because I'm just all over the place. But I know that it you can find the powerful message in your story of the stuff that you have overcome.
Well, and if you want, Francie, we can do a quick little exercise. Everybody who's listening to the podcast today can, if we have regular listeners of Life with Francie, they can we can all do this exercise together because it takes like 0 to no time. If you want, there's a little bit of math involved, but it's real easy math. So if anybody's like, no, I need stuff, right, hit pause right now, go get yourself a pencil and a piece of paper. But if you're like, well, I don't have a story, because there's going to be people who feel that way.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you right now, you do have a story. And if anybody is like you and you're like, oh, but I'm all over the place, I don't know what stories are important. Well, we're going to nail it down in a real quick fashion. So the first thing that I want everybody to do is take your age, however old you are, it doesn't matter. And I want you to round to the nearest 5. So that's either up or down, but whatever the nearest 5 is, I want you to round your age to the nearest 5. Then I want you to take that age and divide by 5. And what that'll do is that'll give you 5 even time periods in your life. Okay. So for me, if I was to do this, I'm 44. So I'm going to round up to 45. Then I'm going to divide by 5, and that'll give me 5 even time periods of 9 years each. Now, I know for a fact, Francie, because I've been doing this for a long time, that there are going to be A-type personalities out there who are listening, and they're going to be like, but that is not the exact number. I am 44, and 44 divided by 5 is 8 point whatever it happens to be, right? And so for those types, I have a solution for you, and it still is easy math. You don't need decimal points for it. If you had to round up in your age, if you had to round up, I just want you to deduct whatever you rounded up by, and it was only 1 or 2, from your last time period. So you just take that rounding error and you take it off your last time period. If you had to round down, and again, it was only ever by 1 or 2, I want you to add that number to the beginning, the first time period, because usually we don't remember what we did in our first, year to 2 years of our life. They're going to be hazy memories at best. And what we've done recently is probably going to be the most clear. So give yourself a buffer at the beginning, or, take away at the end, because you probably don't need all that extra time. So take your age, round to the nearest 5, divide by 5. That'll give you 5 even time periods. And if you're an A-type personality, if you had to round up, take that, whatever that number was, off of your last time period. And if you had to round down, add that on to your first time period. Now, here's where the fun gets. Do get a pencil, do get a piece of paper, and I want you to look at each one of the time periods, time period 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And for that first time period, when you think of you at that age, in my case, Tyler, from 1 to 9, 0 to 9, what is the first memory that springs to your mind? And write it down. And shouldn't take more than 10, 15 seconds for each one of the time periods. This whole exercise shouldn't take more than 2 minutes, including the math, because it needs to be the first one that springs to mind. And it doesn't have to be like a vivid picture memory. It could be like a color or a sound or a feeling or a smell. It could be a very, very vivid picture, or it could be something very hazy and ethereal. But whatever it is, it's the first one that springs to mind. So I want you to write down for your first time period, and then your second time period, your third time period, your fourth time period, and your fifth time period, the first memory that springs to mind when you think of you at that age. Then this is where the exercise takes a little bit of time, and people are going to want to do it after they've listened to the whole podcast. And that is, ask yourself why. Why that memory? Why is that the one that sticks out and stands out in your mind? And start to explore the why. Why is that significant to you? Why is it important? And then once you've established that, start to think to yourself, what are the lessons that I learned from this? And then follow-up question to that, what are the lessons that I could teach from what I learned from this memory? Like, who was I before and who was I after? And did I change? Did I learn anything? What did I know prior to going in? What did I know coming out of it? What are the significant factors that go into this memory being critical to me? And that's going to be your major milestones in life. Those are going to be the things that have set you on this path from where you are to where you are now, so that people can say life with insert your name here and know why you're here. Because I promise you, those impactful memories are the things that have led to on your journey to getting to where you are now. So that everybody can tell a story. And when you start to break it down that way, it's very easy to, first of all, discover what your stories are, and then start to come up with some meaning and significance behind why they're there. And that's how you can start to be able to tell an impactful and powerful story, is you pick the ones that are going to illustrate what you're trying to say.
Oh my gosh, as you were explaining it, like I was doing it in my head. And I was getting even emotional of my own story because I can
Right.
put it like right there for separating it like that. Then it just brings me as 1 to 9 happiness. A lot of chaos, but it was happy chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Then 9 to 18 is chaos, chaos with a lot of emotions and stuff. Then whatever 18 to 24, 25 is like darkness, pure darkness. And now on that last stage, I'm like, okay, it's getting better, but like I can put like, oh my, thank you so much for that. It was
You're
like
welcome.
eye opening.
Yeah, no, and the thing is I do this exercise. I run a 3-day workshop, and when our participants come, they're usually paying anywhere from 1,500 to, if they're on the VIP and they're doing the really fun stuff, 55, $6,000. And I do this exercise with all of them. And every one of them, when we're done, and once we really start to unpack over the next couple of days how to tell that story powerfully and what to do, they all come to me at the end and they're like, that exercise we did, the 5 time periods at the beginning on the first day. I'm like, yeah. They're like, that was worth the money. That was worth every penny that I paid to be here. And that always makes me feel happy, because I can tell you, when you charge somebody $3,500 to come and sit in an auditorium with 200 other people, and you're promising them that they're going to be able to tell a powerful story from stage at the end of it, you want to make sure that you deliver, because that
Yeah.
there's a lot of expectation that comes when you're talking that kind of money. And I have loved doing this exercise with everybody that I do. And there's a lot more that goes into then telling that story really powerfully and effectively, but breaking it down that way at the beginning, like you said, it's an easy thing to do. It's an easy thing to digest, and it's one of those things that becomes instantly eye-opening to see how your life evolved.
I love that. So now I definitely want to know the answer of like, how do I discover my why?
Oh yeah. So, and the funny thing is that's buried within some of that information, right?
Yeah.
Because why those stories are important to us, when we start digging into those, that's probably an underwriting psychological push to why we do the things that we do. And I know that Simon Sinek has some amazing um, workshops and tools for diving into the why. My only caution is you don't do things for just one reason. Human beings are complex, and so you don't just have a why. You probably have many whys, or your why has evolved over time. As new information comes in, the equation changes, and therefore the output changes. And so your why is very likely evolving and adapting. What was relevant at 9 is not relevant at 39. It has influenced and impacted, but there is an evolution within that equation. And so I think it's important that people don't get too hung up on why is my why what it is, or even what is my why, but rather see the journey for what it is and how your motivations evolve and change over time. But doing the deep dive into the why is a very um, fun exercise, especially when paired with your story.
Yeah, no, and I love that. And I can see it a little bit too, but I just wanted to see if you have a little bit more. But yeah, anything else that you would like my listeners to know about you?
Well, no, other than that I don't know that they need to know anything about me, but I really do hope that they learn something about themselves if they do that
Mm.
exercise. And one of the things that I would encourage everybody to remember is not only do you have a story, but you have no idea the impact your story could have until you tell it. Um, I've seen this time and time again where when we hold it in because we're afraid to say something, we are missing opportunities to change other people's lives, and holding on to our stories and keeping them to ourselves is a very selfish thing to do. And one of the greatest and most selfless acts that you can do is be brave, stand up and tell your story, because I promise you the thing you're afraid to say is what your ideal audience needs to hear. And leaders are the people who say the things that other people are afraid to say. So if you can find within your story what that lesson is, and you can find the courage to go out and tell your story in a powerful way, somebody else will need to hear what you have to say. And you have no idea the impact and the change that could happen by you sharing your story until you find the courage to do that. So they don't need to worry about me, but I would encourage them to learn more about themselves. Do a deep dive into your story and find a way to share it so that you can change the world.
Oh my God, like seriously, I can't wait to listen back to this interview. My time with you has been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on my show.
Oh, it was a joy, Francie. It was an absolute joy. And anytime you just feel free. We are connected through Podmatch, and Alex has done a good job of making sure that we can stay connected. So you reach out anytime. It'd be my joy and my pleasure to come back.
Awesome. I love that. But where else can my listeners find you?
Well, they can find me on my website, which I'm sure you'll post in the show notes. And since they're going to scroll down to the show notes before they get to my information, they're going to have to go past your information, Francie. So before they hop on to my platform, they're already on yours. They're listening to yours. So what I would ask them to do is to give you a 5-star review if they could. So, there's a little star there before you get to my information. So don't scroll past those stars. And there's a little comment box there. Make sure you use it. Tell Francie what you like about the show, what you're enjoying, what maybe one of your favorite guests were, or what one of your favorite takeaways were, either from this episode or from another episode. Let her know, so that way she knows what content is resonating with you, and she'll be able to bring in more guests like that. And then if you're willing to do that, then if you scroll down to a little bit further, you'll find my website, which is SeanTylerFoley.com. And Sean is spelled the proper Irish way, SeanTylerFoley.com. And if you go there, tell him Tyler sent you. Right at the top of the page, you'll see an invitation to join my private Facebook group, which is called Endless Stages. And I go live there every Tuesday at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern time, and do a 20-minute training session on whatever happens to be the hot topic in the group that week for public speaking or podcasting. And I do some form of education there. And plus, we post a whole bunch of resources throughout the week that are made available to people. And if you come through my website, instead of just going on Mr. Zuckerberg's site and just typing Endless Stages, if you come through the SeanTylerFoley.com website to get to the Endless Stages invite, we'll give you a free PDF download of the book, The Power to Speak Naked, so you don't have to spend the $17.95 in a bookstore to pick it up. You can just get it for free. I'll also give you my Drop the Mic speaker series. It's 7 5-minute videos. So over the course of a week, you can digest it over a coffee break, and they're actionable steps. Very, very easy to implement actionable steps that'll make you a more effective storyteller and public speaker. And so that's my gift to them too. And then obviously the training that comes with Endless Stages. So all of that, Francie, is for your listeners, but only if they give you a 5-star review. No 5-star review, no free gifts for you.
Like seriously, I was holding my like getting emotional. Like, thank you. Like, I haven't had so many guests, and like nobody has done that before. So thank you. That really truly meant a lot to me.
No, it's my pleasure, and I mean it. The 5 stars are there for a reason, and it's the best way for it's a win-win-win for all of us, right?
Mhm.
If your listeners are enjoying the content, if they tell you, then you can bring on more content. And if you bring on more content that your listeners like, there will be more listeners, which means that the show grows, which means it's easier for you to get on guests. And if the show grows and there's more guests coming on, and there's more visibility to our episode that we recorded, that helps me. So I think it's entirely selfish of me to ask for them to give you a 5-star review. So I'm happy to do it. And I hope they listen and I hope they pay attention. Please, please, please. You have no idea. It'll only take you 30 seconds of your time, but it can have a lasting and lifelong impact on the show. So please give it a 5-star review.
I love that. You're awesome. So thank you again for coming.
It was my pleasure, Francie. We'll talk to you soon.
Um, Alrighty, well, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Remember, you can find my podcast in all major platforms as well as my YouTube channel. You know the deal. Like and subscribe. I hope you have a blessed day. Bye bye.